Whenever a new idea comes along that really challenges the way things are, it's almost never welcomed with a parade. And in the city of Mecca, the birth of Islam was met with opposition so fierce, so personal, it would push people to their absolute limits. Today, we're going to look at the incredible price that was paid for delivering that message.
And that's a question, right? It's been asked throughout all of history. But for the very first Muslims, this wasn't some philosophical debate. The answer was real. It was paid for with insults, with being cut off from society, and yeah, eventually, with blood. Their story really shows you just how far the old guard will go to shut down a voice it can't control. Okay, let's get into it.
So, for the first 3 years, the message of Islam was a quiet affair. It was shared behind closed doors, mostly among close friends and family. But that was never going to last. And here it is. This was the moment. The command comes down from God and it's crystal clear. Take this message public. The time for whispering was over. The Prophet Muhammad was now told to stand up and tell everyone openly.
Now what's so powerful here is how incredibly personal this gets. The Prophet climbs the mountain of Safa, calls all the clans of Mecca together and warns them one by one. But he ends by speaking directly to his own daughter Fatima. The message was revolutionary. Your family name, your tribe, even my love for you as your father, none of it matters on the day of judgment. It's all about your own actions.
And bam, the reaction, it was instant, and it was nasty. Before his words could even settle, his own uncle, Abu Lahab, steps up. He doesn't just argue, he publicly humiliates him, throwing sand and shouting curses. The very first voice of open opposition came from his own blood.
Okay, so the cat's out of the bag. The message is public, and the leadership of Mecca, the Quraysh, they have to do something. But their first move wasn't violence. Nope, it was a full-on PR war, a psychological campaign.
They pulled out all the stops, short of getting physical at first. They made fun of the believers. They started rumors, calling the prophet a magician, a poet, or just plain crazy. They would try to make so much noise that no one could hear the Quran being recited. They even sent their smartest guys to try and trip him up with tricky questions. The goal was simple: discredit the man and destroy the message. This right here, this quote from Abu Jahl, man, it tells you everything you need to know. He was one of the biggest opponents, but we know from historical sources he would sneak out at night to listen to the Quran. He knew it was something special. But his rejection, it had nothing to do with belief. It was all about tribal politics and ego. He basically saw it as, oh, the other clan gets a prophet? No way. We can't let them have that one up on us.
And this is just a perfect comparison, isn't it? You have two leaders both secretly listening to the exact same words. Abu Sufyan is confused. He hears its power, but some of it just goes over his head. But Abu Jahl, he doesn't care what it means. For him, it's all a game of tribal status. The message is irrelevant. Who the messenger is, that's the problem.
So when the name-calling and slander didn't work, and people kept converting, the Quraysh knew they had to step up their game. They moved from public ridicule to heavy-duty political pressure and, well, bribery.
They went straight for the Prophet's protector, his uncle, Abu Talib. They tried 3 times, and each time they got more intense. First, it was a polite, hey, can you tell your nephew to cool it? When that didn't work, it became an ultimatum. You either shut him down, or you give him to us. And then came the most chilling offer of all. We'll give you one of our best young men to be your son, if you just give us Muhammad, so we can kill him. Now here's the thing. Abu Talib wasn't even a follower of the new message, but he was a man of honor and family. And after seeing that his nephew absolutely would not back down, he drew a line in the sand. He gave him his full, unconditional protection. And that one act of loyalty completely wrecked the Quraysh political strategy. They had to find another way.
Okay, so plan A, going through his uncle, failed. Time for plan B. Try to bribe the prophet directly. They sent a delegate to offer him literally everything a man of that time could dream of. More money than anyone else. The ultimate power. They'd make him king. Any woman he wanted to marry. They even offered to find them the best doctors, just in case he was sick and didn't know it. And his response? It just completely bypassed all of their worldly offers. He didn't try to negotiate. He didn't ask for a compromise. He just brought it right back to the core of his entire mission. He told them, I just want one thing from you, to testify that there is no God but God. And with that, the conversation was over. There was no deal to be made. All right, so words failed, politics failed, bribery failed, and that's when things got really, really ugly. The gloves came off,
And the Quraysh turned to what they had left, brutal physical force, and they aimed it squarely at the most defenseless people in the new community.
And Abu Jahl, he was the architect of this cruelty. His strategy was just cold and calculated, based entirely on your social standing. If you were a person of high status, you got publicly shamed. If you were a merchant, they'd organize a boycott to ruin you financially. But if you were a slave, if you had no tribe to protect you, then you faced torture.
And that's the real gut punch here. Those who didn't have that shield of tribal protection were completely exposed. Their bodies became the battlegrounds where the Quraysh tried to physically beat this new faith into submission.
Just think about the story of Bilal. He was an enslaved man, and his owner would drag him out into the scorching desert at noon, lay him on the sand, and put a huge, heavy rock on his chest to crush him. All he had to do was renounce his faith, but all Bilal would say, through the pain, was this one phrase, Ahadan Ahad. The one is one.
And imagine how heart-wrenching this was for the Prophet. He had to watch as the family of Yasser, a father, mother, and son, were tortured out in the open. He didn't have the power to stop it, but he could give them hope. He looked at them in their agony and gave them a promise of paradise. Yasser and his wife, Sumayya, died from that torture. They became the first martyrs of Islam.
So they couldn't break his followers through torture. Their faith only seemed to get stronger. So the leaders of Mecca figured the only thing left to do was to try and break the man himself, physically and spiritually.
This incident, it's just awful. The Prophet was praying right in front of the Kaaba, the most sacred spot. He's in prostration, the most humble position before God. And one of the leaders, Uqba ibn Abi Muayyid, takes the disgusting, bloody guts of a slaughtered camel and just dumps the whole heavy, filthy mess on his back. It was an act of pure, calculated humiliation.
And just picture the scene. He's trapped under the weight of it, unable to get up. And the men who did it, they're standing there laughing so hard they're falling over each other. And it's his own little girl, Fatima, who has to come running out, crying to clean that filth off her father's back with her bare hands. It was an attack on his dignity, on his family, on everything.
But then, when he finally stood up, something changed. For years, he had been patient with all the abuse, but this time was different. He stood up, looked right at the men who were just laughing, and for the very first time, he prayed against them by name. He asked God to deal with them directly. And the sources say the laughter just stopped. Dead silence. Their faces went white with fear. They knew, in that moment, they had finally crossed a line.
So it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The story of early Mecca shows that opposition is like fire. Sometimes it just burns things to the ground, but other times it can forge something into steel. The early Muslims faced down ridicule, politics, bribery, and brutal violence. And how they stood firm in the face of all of that? Well, it raises a timeless question about what conviction is really made of.